Hello and a warm welcome to each one of you. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, Reframing the Project Management and Operational Management in the Design Endeavour. I'm Felix, the webinar coordinator from the Continuing Education Department at the OAA, and I'm happy to facilitate today's session. We will begin today's webinar by acknowledging the land on which we are meeting and calling in from today. For millennia, the place we call Ontario has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples and nations who have been stewards of the land and are deeply connected to its rich cultural and natural landscape. We would like to invite you in a moment of reflection to acknowledge our shared responsibility to address past and present injustices and provide space for Indigenous knowledge and worldviews to shape the architectural landscape of Turtle Island. Before we commence, I would like to share some important information to ensure an effective and professional webinar experience. Please be informed that this session is being recorded for quality and educational purposes. In order to maintain a stable internet connection, we have muted all participant microphones and disabled video feeds. We highly encourage engagement through our Q&A window. Feel free to submit any questions you may have for our speaker. These will be addressed in the designated question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Kindly note, the chat function will be deactivated following this introduction, except when needed for responding to questions during the webinar. For those seeking continuing education learning hours, please note that attendance is crucial. A minimum of 80% attendance is required for these hours to be accredited to your OAA transcript. Please allow a few weeks for the processing and reporting of these hours. And lastly, please note that the presenter does not provide insurance, legal, or practice advice, and the OAA does not bear responsibility for errors or omissions in discussions during the webinar. For accessibility, we provide automated closed captioning service available in multiple languages to accommodate the need of our diverse audience. Now, I'm excited to introduce our speaker for today's session. Please welcome Don Ardiel. Thanks for your attention. Let us now proceed with the session, and I'm passing it over to you, Don.
Thank you very much. The first thing I'd like to do today is, if you would like to see this webinar in full screen, go to the upper right corner of your Zoom window, and you will see, if you move the mouse to the upper right corner of the Zoom window, you will see a small a button that says View. Click View, and then go to Speaker. You're probably currently in Gallery. If you go to Speaker, then the presentation and everything will take up the full screen. Okay? Thank you for doing that. We're going to do a webinar today titled Reframing the Project, Different Ways of Thinking About Managing the Design Project. In this webinar, we're going to explore other ways of looking at project management by taking the design project apart, analyzing it, and putting it back together differently. I'm Don Ardiel. I'm an architect, educator, project manager. I was in practice for 28 years, 25 years in teaching practice and project management to professional associations and in the post-secondary panel. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Canadian Handbook of Practice for Architects, 3rd edition, the editor of a guide to determining appropriate fees for the services of an architect, 2nd edition, and I'm the former RIIC Director of Practice Support and Director of Syllabus. What I'd like to do right now is I want to ask you, before we get into this subject, I'd like you to respond to this question in the Zoom chat. What problem or problems do you hope that attending this learning experience will help you solve? You've got a minute to think about this and enter it into the Zoom chat.
Perfect. Thank you very much, John. And this is just a kind reminder to our members that the chat is still active. So if you would like to give your response, please use the chat function. Thank you.
Well, this is a lot of responses. A lot of responses. I'm seeing the phrase time management come up frequently. Client management, managing difficult or large clients, efficiency and time management, preventing scope creep, managing the project. Well, that's really broad. Conflict resolution, estimating project timelines, time management, managing clients, clarify the roles and responsibilities as a project manager, as an owner's advisor, defining the project management more clearly to our staff and support. Oh, my goodness, time management, establishing clear delineation of roles during construction contract administration. Absolutely. Streamlining our processes. Oh, we're going to talk about that. I was reading their coconut prevention, but I'm not sure. Well, I don't think that's right. I don't think it's about coconut prevention. Time management, risk and communications, how to verify the proper startup and closing of the architect in the project management process. This is all terrific input, and I'm really glad that we're so engaged. I had hoped to bring up people's names, but that is far beyond what I can do. We're going to be touching on some of these ideas, and hopefully you'll be able to gather the beginnings of solutions to some of the challenges that you've presented. Why are we talking about a different approach to managing the design project? Well, architects have been following the same project management approach for decades. Innovation in design and construction has not led to innovations in managing the design project. Other stakeholders in the design and construction industry are exercising increasing influence with the client, and new procurement methods, such as integrated project delivery, are changing the relationships between the design construction industry stakeholders. This is why we're talking about a different approach to managing the design project. I've delivered workshops, project management and practice management workshops for quite a few years, and the same repeating comments come up. In project management workshops that I've led, participants have mentioned the same recurring problems and conflicts: maintaining the project schedule, rapidly changing requirements with no change in schedule or fees. It's a hurry up and wait environment, inadequate time for construction document coordination, project objectives are unclear, and being pulled in multiple directions. How do we change and update our practices to alleviate some of these recurring problems? I just want to review the learning outcomes for this workshop. At the completion of this webinar, the participant will start to be able to examine the current project management approach to the work of the design endeavor to identify inefficiencies, differentiate responsibilities for the design program from those of the construction program. Consider how an operational management approach to construction contract administration and general review would be more efficient than a project management approach. and consider the benefit of an adaptive rather than predictive project management approach in the design process. At the completion of this, it isn't that change makes design difficult. It's that our practice and project management processes make change difficult. Architectural practice is dynamic with many interrelated processes and stakeholders. When considering changing design and production processes, they can have a far-reaching consequence in managing a project. Let's start with a bigger context. From the client's point of view, the building program is intended to solve a problem. The problem could be the result of influencing factors such as the lack of appropriate space in the right place or realizing a business opportunity. The client, particularly those who are not familiar with facility design and construction projects, may perceive the building program as one big endeavor where decision-making is free-flowing, decisions can be made at any time, and can be reversed easily without impact. We often speak of building projects. In fact, we should refer to building programs. The endeavor to create, renovate, or adapt a building is comprised of multiple projects. I raise this issue as some in our profession don't recognize the design aspect of a building program as a project. I distinctly remember one workshop where a senior architect forcefully argued that there is only one project, and that is the construction project. The architect provides services to the construction project. I don't agree with that view. A building program may have a multitude of projects of which the architect may be responsible for the outcome of several. For the purposes of this webinar, in most cases, the project refers to the design project as an identified endeavor within the building program. The design construction program may be illustrated as discrete but interrelated projects and operations, each showing the overlapping buildup of resources to a maximum during the program, then a drop-off of resource utilization as the program approaches completion. Each of these projects has specific deliverables. Underlying all of the projects are program coordination and program monitoring and control. Design projects follow the life cycle illustrated here. The project schedule may be fast-tracked, or a construction management approach to construction contract may be used, requiring multiple successive sets of tender documents. There may be additional phases required by a funding agency. However, all projects follow the same basic life cycle. You'll note that I don't include construction contract administration and general review in this model. I approach these activities as related more to the monitoring and controlling functions of the construction project that follows the design project. In practical terms, these two functions are the operationalization of the outcome of the design project. The process of the construction contract administration and general review is more aligned with operational management than project management. The same set of phased relationships between resources and time are reflected in the construction life cycle. Looking at our processes helps us analyze the structure of how we work. A definition of the project helps. A project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. One of the first things to examine is the relationship between working in a project environment, which architects almost always do, and working in an operational environment, which we seldom do. Before we go further, I introduce you to the concept of operations in contrast to projects. An operation is an organizational function performing the ongoing execution of activities that produce the same product or provide a repetitive service. An operation does not create something unique, nor does it have a defined outcome, at which time the operation terminates. Operational management is the ongoing organizational activities associated with supporting functional elements, as opposed to project elements. Operational management also includes support of products and services that the organization has created through project activities. Projects create unique outcomes with a defined time span towards a fixed end or milestone. The project objective is effective delivery. The purpose of operations is to create the same outcome over and over without a defined time span. Its objective is efficient delivery. I've introduced the concepts of projects and operations. Now I'd like to introduce you to a third concept, the program. A program is related projects, subsidiary programs, and program activities, including operations, that are managed in a coordinated manner to obtain benefits not available from managing them individually. The program may include elements of related work outside of the scope of the discrete projects in the program. The CHOP also includes a definition of the program. A program is a group of projects managed in a coordinated way. This reflects the way that an owner's representative would manage the design and construction projects of a single program endeavor. I'm going to read this definition from Patrick Weaver, as it's rather important as we move forward. Programs include projects and elements of operational work and adapt to change in the times and circumstances. A project is chartered to create specific deliverables as efficiently as possible. Programs focus on the coordination of several related projects and other activities over time to deliver benefits to the organization. It's virtually impossible to effectively contract out the program management role. The program manager must be an integral part of the organization's strategic business. The relationship between project and program in the context of design projects is described in the CHOP 3rd edition, Chapter 4.1, Types of Design Construction Program Delivery. Throughout this handbook, the term design construction program is used to describe the total endeavor of creating a new or renovated facility. At a minimum, this involves a design project and a construction project. These two projects managed in harmony constitute design construction program. The distinction of program from project and the further definition of individual projects within the program form a foundation for understanding the scope of the roles and responsibilities of the architect and differentiating the architect's responsibilities from those of the client, constructor, and others. This understanding then filters to the individual contracts for delivery of design services, building construction, and other projects needed to realize the complete endeavor. What this means for the architect is that the design construction endeavor has many defined deliverables, each created under separate projects, but managed as a program by the client. Although the client-architect agreement and the client-constructor agreement both describe in detail the separate responsibilities of the client, architect, and constructor, understanding that the design project and construction project are distinct but managed jointly by a program supports a better understanding of the boundaries. It also helps when we believe that we are being assigned work that is more appropriately handled by the client representative or program manager. Let's bring these three concepts together in the context of a design project with an architectural practice. In the design firm, there are both project activities and operational activities. Projects within the firm may include both design projects undertaken on behalf of a client and those to improve productivity, quality, or responding to a market need, such as upgrading IT systems and software, exploring a new design approach, implementing 3D visualization, or production process improvement. Operations include management processes such as financial management, human resources management, office administration, risk management, and some aspects of marketing and branding. I'd like to introduce you to another operational management concept. Construction contract administration and general review are an operational activity rather than a project activity. The design project and the construction contract administration and general review operation become a design program within the architectural office. Construction contract administration is an operation of fulfilling the role of the consultant defined in the construction contract. The roles may vary. However, it typically includes certifying the work through the process of general review, managing payments, and change management. We want construction contract administration to proceed smoothly, routinely, and without variation. We may say, but construction contract administration and general review create a unique outcome, a building. Therefore, they are a phase of the design project. My response to that is that they are not part of the design project. They are a distinct operation in the design program. The contractor creates a unique outcome as the deliverable of the construction project. Construction contract administration and general review creates reports, change documentation, and payment certification using a methodical, prescribed, and repeated process. The objective of effective construction contract administration and general review is methodical, repetitive, with no variation in procedures. I suggest that the design endeavor is a program comprised of a design project or several design projects and a construction contract administration and general review operation. Construction contract administration and general review are an operation that is concurrent with and supportive of the constructor's project. Looking at construction contract administration, what can we do that will optimize efficiency during general review and field visits? What can we do to make general review and field visits as efficient as an assembly line? Practically speaking, what does an operational management approach mean for managing construction contract administration and general review? The key to an effective operation is to limit variation. Limiting variation is the basis for quality control in operational management. It can be intimidating for a young or new architect to arrive at the construction site. So much is going on, so many things to look at. I remember as an intern arriving at the construction site for my first project, I was overwhelmed. Operationalizing construction contract administration and general review starts with developing a structured and consistent approach. Prior to a site visit, review the drawings, previous field reports, and supplemental instructions, even if you think you know them thoroughly. As you're reviewing the drawings, ask yourself, what do I need to focus on today? What am I looking for? Focus your attention on what is most important to you as an architect. Develop and use checklists for both shop drawings and field visits. The key to optimizing an activity is to limit variation and maintain a structured routine. Develop and use checklists. Have a structured checklist for the items that you intend to review during visits based on your review of the drawings beforehand. At a minimum, a checklist should include those features of the construction that most affect the function of the building envelope. The CHOP includes numerous checklists that are available for download. These checklists can be the basis for developing your own proprietary quality control system. The best checklists are those that you build yourself over the course of your career. Addressing the second learning outcome, do you think that this approach could work in your office? You can comment on this question in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Returning to our first learning outcome, examine the firm's current project management approach to the work of the design endeavor to identify inefficiencies. We have taken the design project apart by phases to examine processes. Now we take it apart in a different way. We're going to differentiate project scope from product scope. We're doing this to help identify specific problems in our design and construction processes. Identification and problem definition are the first steps in problem solving. Project scope is the work performed to deliver a product, service, or result with a specified feature with specified features and functions. Product scope is the features and functions that characterize a product, service, or result. To identify and define project management problems, we need to differentiate whether the problem is with the management of the project or the management of the product. The project scope includes managing the scope of architectural services, managing resources, human, firm, infrastructure, and consultants, planning, managing, and controlling costs and revenue, managing stakeholder engagement and communications, managing project risk, and managing documentation. The product scope includes the function and features of the product. The functions of the product include the design of a facility. The features of that product are the conceptual design options, developed design options, cost estimations of construction, construction documents, including the drawing specifications, and procuring construction. I'd like you to look at several problems. Read the problem and take 1 minute to consider a response and write your response in the Zoom chat. Then we'll take a minute to discuss this. This is the first problem dealing with project scope management or a product scope management.
Perfect.
Take 1 minute.
Perfect, Don. Again, thank you very much. And again, this is just a reminder or a quick reminder to our members that the chat has been enabled now. So you can use the chat function and put any comments in there. Thank you.
Looking at the responses, we see about 80% of you have labeled this as a product scope problem, and about 20% have indicated it's a project scope problem. So we have, in looking at that, let's read the question. Too many omissions in construction documents resulting in excessive time spent during construction to resolve issues and conflicts. Okay, and most of you have said that's a product problem. Let's move on to the next question. Cost estimate indicates substantial over-budget situation at the completion of design development. Take 1 minute and enter your responses into the chat. Now, this time I see that the vast majority of you have indicated that this is a project scope problem. Several have indicated a product scope, and one person has indicated both product and project. Several people have indicated this is both a project and a product scope issue. Let's move on to the third question. Building officials have identified code violations in construction documents at a building permit application. Take 1 minute. And I see that with this third question about building officials identifying code violations, we're seeing a lot of people who indicate this is both a product scope problem and a project scope problem. So this particular problem probably has multiple issues, multiple gaps that need to be addressed. Let's move on to our final problem. At construction document review, construction manager indicates that a particular detail is too complex for the trade. Take a minute and enter your response in the chat. And again, we see a very, very healthy response to this. Most people have indicated that this is a problem in product scope management rather than project scope management. A number of you have indicated that it's in both. I think the purpose that I did of this exercise is so that people can understand that you need to really pull things apart in order to identify specific issues in a problem. We're going to look at how do we pull a problem apart? How do we know if it's a scope management problem or a product management problem? Sorry, a project scope problem or a product scope problem? We're going to look at gap analysis. We've looked at several common design project situations to find solutions to these process problems. A useful tool is gap analysis. Gap analysis is a means of identifying processes to achieve a desired goal. It's used when the desired outcome is not achieved and a change is needed. It facilitates the exploration of the current state of processes and outcomes, the future desired state, and the gap between the two. It forces a realistic look at the present and helps identify things that need to be done to achieve success. The outcome is the alignment between the group members on the desired state, the current state, and what needs to happen to bridge the gap. Working with all of those involved with the problem, first, identify the future or desired state in detail, such as no errors, omissions, or conflicts in the documents issued for construction. Second, identify the present situation, problem, or state. Describe the same elements as you did in the desired state, but now in the present state. Third, focus on the gap between the present and the future. What are the gaps? What are the barriers and what's missing? Build a consensus amongst the group that there is agreement on the gaps, barriers, and missing elements. Next, identify strategies to address the gaps, barriers, and missing elements. To recap, identify the future or desired state in detail, such as no errors, omissions, or conflicts in documents issued for construction. Second, identify the present situation, problem, or state. Describe the same elements as you did in the desired state, but now in the present state. Third, focus on the gap between the present and the future. What are the gaps? What are the barriers? And what's missing? Build a consensus amongst the group that is agreement on the gaps, barriers, and missing elements. We can extend the gap analysis to include an impact grid. The impact grid helps to differentiate the strategies so that we can apply resources to the most beneficial strategies. Take each strategy and assess the difficulty in implementation and the level of impact. Finally, we focus on implementing those strategies that will result in the biggest impact and are easiest to do. We use gap analysis, impact grids, and other facilitation and process design tools to identify, analyze, and solve problems. Pulling the project processes apart from product processes allows us to get focused. The end result is deciding what we can do and can't do within the resources that we have, and which result will give us the greatest beneficial impact. I'm a supporter of the 2080 principle. This principle, developed by quality expert and engineer Joseph Juran in 1941, was based on the earlier 1902 work of Italian economist Vilfredo Pareto. Put simply, the Pareto principle, or the 2080 principle, states that 20% of our effort results in 80% of our results. 20% of the factors that cause errors results in 80% of the errors. Let's pull the project apart in yet another way. What effect does separating the design component of the project from construction contract administration and general review have on managing processes? Program management is the application of knowledge, skills, and principles to a program to achieve the program objectives and obtain benefits and control not available by managing the program components individually. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. A program manager's role is different from a project manager's role. This description of the roles helps to differentiate them. A program manager is a business leader whose goal is to develop programs and initiatives for an organization. A project manager is a skilled professional who creates, oversees, and delivers various aspects of an organization. Programs are not merely big projects, they're different. The key difference is in the focus of the management effort. Project management is focused on creating deliverables as efficiently as possible. Program management is focused on maximizing the benefits realized by the organization. Another question to ask yourself is whether the client representative is acting in the role of a project manager or a program manager. I present this question so that you have some knowledge of both roles and their differences. When you ask the client representative to describe their role and responsibilities, don't assume that the client representative understands the difference between the roles or even understands what their responsibilities are in the design construction program. You don't want to find yourself partway through the project and being hooked into either the project manager or program manager functions that you did not contract for. Let's pull the project apart in yet another way. Beyond receiving revenue for undertaking a client's project, what does or can a firm derive from a client's project to help it improve, advance, or elevate to the next plateau of performance? What does the firm get out of a client's project? Is it more than just the client's building and making money? What are the firm's strategic goals and what does the firm want? I suggest that every client project presents a firm with an opportunity to enhance core competency and therefore competitive advantage. In this example, the client wants a building design. Ask the question, what does the firm want to get out of this client's project? The client's project is procure a design for a new facility, procure design services from architects and engineers to administer the construction contract and validate that the design is being constructed according to the construction documents. The firm's project is provide design services to the client's project and use the opportunity presented by the client's project to develop accelerated processes and increase quality outcomes through reduced time-consuming errors, omissions, and conflicts, and reduction in the resources required during construction contract administration and general review to resolve conflicts and solve problems. In this sense, there are two elements to this program. The client's design program includes the design project and the construction contract administration and general review operations, and the firm's productivity project. In this situation, who is the program manager in the firm? And let's continue to pull the project apart. Consider conceptual design and design development as one project and construction document production as a separate, different project. Why would we want to do this? Doesn't this complicate the management of the endeavor? In 1994, Eddie Obeng published his method for describing projects using two dimensions: how to do and how to do it. Sorry, what to do and how to do it. These two dimensions present us with four different types of projects. The project types are labeled painting by numbers, going on a quest, making a movie, and lost in the fog, or a walk in the fog. A painting by numbers project is when stakeholders, that includes the client, the design team, etc., are sure about what is to be done. The organization is going through a repetitive project and knows the skills needed. Written procedures, methods, and systems are available to replicate what it is that has to be done. All of the stakeholders, and that includes the client, the architects, the engineers, etc., are clear on what to do and how to do it. Going on a quest, the stakeholders are very sure about how the project is to be done, but are unclear about what to do. The organization is clear about the method to be used and has the expertise. It needs to spend time defining what. It's clear on how to do it, but less clear on what needs to be done. The going on a quest project, the stakeholders are clear about what to do, but less clear on how to do it. It needs to spend time defining how the project is to be done. It's clear on how to do it, but unclear on what to do. Oh, sorry, should reverse that. It's clear on what to do, but unclear on how to do it. And then we go to a walk in the fog. The stakeholders are unclear what is to be done. The stakeholders are unclear how the project is to be done. The organization is attempting to do something it has not done before. The organization needs to spend defining what and how. It's unclear what to do and unclear how to do it. Conceptual design and design development are not the same kind of work as construction documents and tendering. Conceptual design is like a walk in the fog, when the architect is working to figure out both how to engage the stakeholders and create a design. Design development is more like making a movie. The architect knows knows how to proceed with stakeholders, but whether the design will be successful is still not entirely clear. Construction documentation and tendering is at risk of oversimplification, is more akin to going on a quest. If a new envelope technology is being proposed, or if new software program is being used for documentation. If the design calls for traditional cladding and documentation, then the same manner as in the previous projects, a paint by numbers description may be appropriate. Each of these requires a different approach to management and control. For example, consider the different management approaches needed for these types of projects. A walk in the fog conceptual design project will not benefit from closely monitoring scope, cost, and schedule to limit variation and maintain control. For a project's conceptual design phase or a walk in the fog, consider an adaptive project management approach rather than a traditional approach, also called predictive management. And now we come to the fourth learning outcome. Consider the benefit of an adaptive rather than a predictive approach to the design process. When we refer to predictive and adaptive project management, we are talking about variations in the project life cycles. These variations are not insignificant and lead to very different approaches in how the project is managed and how the project team does its work. A predictive life cycle is a form of project life cycle in which the project scope, time, and cost are determined in the early phases of the project. The predictive life cycle is defined as determining the scope, time, and cost of the project as early in the project life cycle as possible. Since the deliverables in the product are already defined from the very start of the project manager should manage the changes in scope to prevent any problems in implementing the entire project. The activities in the predictive life cycle follow a series of sequential or overlapping phases. As we've already seen, design projects have traditionally followed the life cycle illustrated in this slide. The project schedule may be fast-tracked, or a construction management approach to the construction contract may be used, requiring multiple successive sets of tender documents. There may be additional phases required by a funding agency. However, all projects have followed the same basic life cycle. You'll note that I don't include construction contract administration and general review in this model. As I've indicated, I approach these activities as related more to the monitoring and controlling functions of the construction project that follows the design project. In practical terms, these two functions are the operationalization of the outcome of the design project. Unlike a predictive project management model, where as much as possible is planned and determined before moving ahead, adaptive project management moves ahead as soon as enough planning is done to take the first step. Adaptive project management uses a project life cycle that is iterative and incremental. The adaptive life cycle is also called a flexible or change-focused method, or agile or change-driven method, and it responds to immensely high levels of change as well as the ongoing participation of different parties involved. In an agile managed project, the client is not outside of the design team, but is an integral part of the team and is directly involved in design decision-making. The advantage of the adaptive life cycle is that it's appropriate for projects that involve higher levels of complexity and uncertainty. The agile approach is built on rapid iterations. Each iteration should execute assigned tasks, and each task should be completed before another task can be undertaken. The risk is minimized for this project lifecycle. The advantage of the adaptive project managing includes appropriate for projects that involve high levels of complexity and uncertainty. Iterations address issues for every task. The risk of missing project targets while simultaneously expending resources is minimized for this particular project lifecycle. The disadvantages of adaptive project management include using iterative development. It's unknown what the outcome will be, how much it will cost, or when it will be finished. Therefore, the deliverables, scope, schedule, and cost are not known until the work is completed. The trade-offs in this approach are the risk of not achieving the project outcomes. The trade-offs in this approach are the risk of not achieving project outcomes are reduced, and outcomes may be achieved earlier, but you don't know in advance when the outcomes will be achieved or how much it will cost in advance of starting the work. There are many differences between predictive and adaptive project management. Each has its own processes and vocabulary. To further this discussion and place adaptive project management into a context that may be useful for architectural practice, we'll focus on the project lifecycle. The adaptive approach uses a burn-down list of functions and features. The list is fed into the iterative plan and development cycle, and through evaluation and learning, the value is generated and the deliverables created. One of the variations of this approach is called Agile. It's very common in software development, but it can be applied to any knowledge creation project, such as building design. The life cycle of an adaptive method is plan, develop, evaluate, and learn in rapid iterations, resulting in incremental progress. To transform the high level of project failure experienced in the software industry to deliver projects successfully, 17 software developers, leaders in their industry, got together at the Snowbird Ski Resort in Utah in February of 2001 and worked to solve the problem, and they wrote the Agile Manifesto. We uncover better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. This simple manifesto became the foundation for transforming the software development industry. When is the best application for each project management approach? Describing the predictive life cycle, scope, deadline, and cost are determined as soon as possible. Efforts are focused on meeting established commitments. It uses the traditional waterfall approach to management, where each task follows the previous task and the work goes continuously in one direction. It has sequential phases. It begins with defining the scope and drawing up a detailed plan of the necessary activities. From there, work is focused on following the plan. Certainty is valued over functionality, and time to deliver is critical. When is the best application for adaptive project management approach? The adaptive life cycle is a change-focused method to optimize flexibility. It requires the ongoing participation on the team by engaging parties, including clients, user stakeholders, and other keys to project success. It could be used effectively in pre-design, conceptual design, and development stages of the design project, and when optimal functionality is valued over certainty and time to deliver. When is the best application of a hybrid project management approach? The hybrid life cycle is appropriate when managing vague objectives or considerable complexity, rapidly resolving uncertainty of project requirements to a point where scope, schedule, cost, and quality can be determined. When the partial delivery of a product is key to success, such as construction management. A construction management lifecycle approach may be beneficial, and optimized delivery of requirements is valued over initial certainty. In a hybrid approach, an adaptive method may replace the traditional sequential phases of the design project from conceptual development to the end of design development. Once design development is complete and there is a high level of certainty of the outcome, production can begin using the traditional phased method. The integrated project delivery method requires a multidisciplinary team to work closely together and collaboratively, sometimes in a single co-located office. The design process involves rapid design development and real-time review. The application of the agile process, common in software development, becomes an appropriate management model. The agile process works in short bursts of effort called sprints. The intense task execution, evaluation, learning, and on to the next task execution. The design and evaluation happens not with the architect doing design work and then when finished, the engineer discipline steps in. Architectural design, engineering design, and constructability analysis are ideally done concurrently. This process involves more decision-making earlier in the project. The functions or purpose of the integrated project delivery method are improving cost, schedule, and quality on design construction programs, less conflict and competition among stakeholders, more collaborative approach, less waste, and reducing project risk when outcomes are unclear, requirements are yet to be fixed, and innovation is needed. The features of the integrated project delivery method include a multi-party contractual relationship in which all major stakeholders, including the owner, designers, and constructor, share the project risk and profit. Designers and constructors are compensated for costs. A risk pool is divided at the completion of a project based on an agreed-upon formula developed during the path to contract phase. There is a collaborative decision-making by the senior management team, the project management team, and the project implementation teams. There is extensive involvement of the owner throughout the project. Finally, IPD involves lean thinking, or the reduction of waste, including material and human effort. The phases of an IPD project introduce a different vocabulary from the traditional design construction program lifecycle. The intent of the different nomenclature of the lifecycle phases is to separate this process from preconceived notions of how a project should be managed. Putting it all together, we can have an adaptive project management during conceptual and design development phases, predictive project management during construction documentation and tendering phases, construction contract administration and general review operations during construction, facilitating a firm's performance enhancement project, wrapped inside a comprehensive strategic program. And with integrated project delivery, predictive and adaptive project management, programs, project operations, project scope, managing based on types of projects, we complete our learning outcomes for this presentation. Examine the current project management approach to the work of the design endeavor to identify inefficiencies, differentiate responsibilities for the design program from those of the construction program, consider how an operational management approach to construction contract administration and general review would be more efficient than a project management approach, and consider the benefit of an adaptive rather than predictive project management design process. What we want to do is create change. And I hope that this presentation has introduced you to the idea of creating change beneficially and not being afraid of it. Just following up with some of the resources that you might be interested in, the Project Management Institute has many publications that are available. The one that I would recommend for people if you're interested in integrated project delivery is getting the Agile Practice Guide. Agile project management is used up to the validation stage in integrated project delivery. If you are a member of PMI, you can download their entire library at no cost in an electronic format. 3 books that I have found useful in the design of processes. The old one that I've come to all the time, Facilitating with Ease by Ingrid Benz. It's terrific if you want to learn how to help groups identify problems, analyze problems, and make decisions. Universal Methods of Design and 101 Design Methods are both good books for process design ideas. I always come back to 3 books, Business Model Generation and Value Proposition Design and Business Models for Teams. These books really help you rethink how architectural practice could be, okay? And then we have a favorite book of mine by my colleague and good friend, Brian Palmquist, a member of the AIBC. Brian offers construction contract administration and review courses for the AIBC. And the second edition of his book, An Architect's Guide to Construction, Enduring Ways in the Age of Immediacy, is a great book for all architects, but particularly young and new architects, to learn how to do construction contract administration and general review. And go to the RAIC's website. It's top.raic.ca, and you will find the Canadian Handbook of Practice for Architects, 3rd edition, freely available with a lot of downloadable templates. Finally, there are a couple of educational opportunities you may be interested in. There is a construction contract and administration field review online course that's offered by the RAIC. It is a full graduate level course. It is a supplemental graduate level course of the syllabus program available to anybody who's interested in learning more about construction contract administration and field review. It was put together primarily by Brian Palmquist with others, including myself. The other course that you may be interested in is Project Management for Architects. It's an in-person course offered by the RAIC, and the RAIC has now restarted its face-to-face learning opportunities, and this course will be offered 3 times this coming spring and again in the fall in various cities across Ontario, and this year in Saskatchewan. And that ends my presentation. So Felix, if you'd like to turn on the Q&A session, we can find out if anybody has any questions.
Thank you so much, Don. Yes, there are already a few questions posted into the Q&A window, and you can all find it in the Zoom bar at the bottom of your screen.
Okay, the first question I have from Huda: the program shape the baseline of the scope and projects. Sometimes architects have no control on it, like healthcare projects, which create big risks of change to the project. Let me read this again. The program shape the baseline. I'm sorry, Huda, I'm not entirely sure what you're asking here, Huda. Yeah, it's true. Architects don't have control over the baseline. However, architects have complete and exclusive control of the quality of work that goes out of your office. You also have the control of the way that your office produces the work. Now, you do have to be responsive to the way the client and granting agencies want deliverables produced and presented. But part of my thinking, specifically when I refer to business model generation, is rethinking how architectural services are delivered. And that is within your scope to rethink how you want to work inside your firm. I'm going to move on to Gabriel. Can you speak to any firsthand project experience with implementing these alternative integrated management strategies and how buy-in was achieved from the parties? I am now retired, and I actually I not regret, but it's unfortunate that I'm no longer in practice, because if I were, I would absolutely want to be working towards integrated project delivery. There are firms that are embarking on integrated project delivery, and they are completely reconfiguring how they do design. They not only their processes, but reconfiguring their office. There's one architect I know, Bill Lett Architects in Peterborough, are really at the forefront of providing consulting services for integrated project delivery. Now, do I have lots of experience? It would be lovely to say, yes, we've done this 1,000 times. The purpose of this webinar is not to tell you, this is what I've done, this is how you can do it. It's up to every architect to explore your design and production processes and construction contract administration processes. It's up to every architect to do that in your firm. Use the process tools, identify inefficiencies, and then make changes. The reason I say that is because every firm needs to develop its own core competencies and competitive advantage. Something like this, I mean, you can get the help of consultants who can come in, but the change has to be driven from the top and get buy-in from others in the firm. Somebody said, that appears to be we don't have any more questions. Does anybody have? Oh,
so
sorry, Felix.
I think, John, there was one other question posted by Huda, which is, how do you think technology will affect the adaptive project management?
When you're referring to technology, you're referring to building modeling and using Revit. I think that's probably, Huda, what you're referring to. I think that the purpose of building modeling and programs like Revit, where to integrate design, production, etc., from one end of the entire design construction program to the other. Revit, before it was called Revit, it was developed for the automotive industry so that they could make changes relatively quickly. But modeling and using the building model and the levels of detail through the entire integrated project delivery program, I think is really, we're really seeing how technology and process are now coming together. I mean, Revit's been on the market for 20 years, and I think it has taken this long to realize processes of planning, design, and construction where the technology will best work for it. I think the technology can change quickly, but our design construction processes change quite slowly. Robert has said, client education is sometimes lacking. Any tips to help the client understand and appreciate scope? My suggestion is to, and I've mentioned this to other architects, as a core competency, develop educating the client as a key part of your processes. It's not just, how can I tell the client what to do? How can I make them understand? How can I make them pay me the fees I'm owed, which I often hear? It's develop an actual program of education. Develop a scheme, develop a strategy. It includes making connection with clients. It includes having an educational program that you want them to be part of, having a reason for them to be a part of the education program, combining in this education program with your marketing, obviously, but include real-time events, making the education program of value to the client. So one possibility would be to highlight to the client where on a past project, there have been inefficiencies in the way we are working together on this design and construction program. Can we talk about the inefficiencies and how I can help you improve the outcomes of your design construction program? One of the things that I like to say here when we have a client who doesn't appear to understand is I like to come out with the line, I'm afraid there is a misunderstanding between the two of us. Please help me understand how I can better understand you. Okay? Assume that you're the one who misunderstands and ask the client to help you understand their needs better.
Thank you so much, Don. And just a reminder for all members, if you do have questions, please post them into the Q&A window. Don is going to address all these questions right now.
I see we had another question coming in from Samara. Can you give an example of adaptive project management and agile project management? Yes, that is, hang on, it's right here somewhere. Integrated project delivery, an action guide for leaders. This is developed by the Integrated Project Delivery Alliance. It is a terrific book that describes how integrated project delivery works. And the way it describes it, you can see that it is a completely different process than predictive project management. Agile project management perfectly fits into integrated project delivery. We may see another delivery method coming up in the future called programmatic delivery, and I expect that that will even more closely align with software development processes. But adaptive project management and agile are the management tools that are used in integrated project delivery. Don't have any other questions just yet. You're always welcome to contact me. I didn't put up my email address. My email address is very simple. It's just don@ourdeal.ca. I always look forward to people's questions. I use questions that I'm presented by architects in creating educational opportunities. As it indicated, the RAIC is relaunching project management for architects, and we do talk about in depth all of the kinds of things I've talked about today. It's going to be offered, I think, in April in Toronto, in Ottawa in May, and we're planning Saskatoon and Regina in June, and then we're looking at another city in the fall. But it is a 40-hour course. It takes place over 2 weekends, and the course qualifies you to write your PMP certification, your project management professional certification offered by PMI. If you want to know more about the courses, you can go to the RAIC website and just type in project management for architects. And I'm not trying to sell it on the OAA's website. I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to offer educational resources to all of the architects in our community.
Thank you so much, Don. And there is another question that just came in from Ashraf.
Okay, I'm scrolling down here. When a client is cutting the project budget significantly, especially after multiple iteration sessions in an IPD approach over 3 years, new team members show up from the client team after the turnover of a key member, and they are asking for major architectural changes as a project lead. What would you recommend to move forward? The new members are not educated and very young. In this case, I would suggest to the representative, and I'm assuming there is some kind of a representative above these members that you can talk to about the need for an education event. I suggest taking the time, investing the money in preparing a face-to-face workshop for the team. And the rationale for this would be, we had these kinds of education workshops at the beginning of IPD, but now we have had significant team changes. Client, we need to go back and have that introductory workshop again. You are asking us to do a great deal of work for which we have been paid, but you're now asking us to redo it. We are then probably going to have to send you another bill. We'd like to manage this situation. So let's have another introductory educational workshop for these new team members. Hopefully that would be a good educational avenue. Putting educational workshops together isn't free. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes resources, but it's a great investment for building relationships with stakeholders.
Perfect, John. Thanks again. And we skipped one question from an anonymous attendee.
Oh, how would you bring up the gaps that you see in your office as an employee? And where would you start if there are a lot to address? Which are most important, efficient to attack first? Well, I think the way I would do this first is just as I have indicated in gap analysis, we start with the desired state. So you're an employee, you want to bring up these kinds of inefficiencies to your principal. I suggest bring up to the principal, you know, this firm could be really competitive and we could realize competitive advantage if certain inefficiencies, we were able to address these inefficiencies. The desired state is ABCD. The current state is FGH. So I would bring it first. What is the desired state? Probably people will agree. Yes, that's a terrific desired state. That is great. That's where we want to be. But where are we now? We are at this state. And then you work to identify the gap. One of the key reasons that I advocate using books and using the tools such as Facilitating with Ease and 101 Design Methods is you have a method. It's not just you saying things are wrong. You have a method. You have a way of communicating to the executive in your firm that if we can apply this method to our processes, we would realize improvements. It's not about me saying we're bad. Let's take this method and apply it and see where we can go. So again, I would attack what is the future state? What's the desired state? Where are we now? And then can we talk about the gaps between the two and use a tool, some kind of a tool to take you personally out from an attack, shall we say? Oh, Don, could you please repeat your contact information? I'll tell you what I'll do. I will put it right here in the answer live. Done. No, I'll type an answer. Okay, I've put my contact information. Oh, where is it now?
John, the question jumped into the answered tab.
Oh, I see. We go to the answers tab, and then yes, you'll see my contact, my email address right there. Okay, on the answers tab. We have another question. I saw it. What different software used for all types of project management processes? Agile software And adaptive software is very different from predictive software. I'm sure we're all familiar with predictive software. It's Microsoft Project, open project. It's the kind of Gantt chart softwares. I like to augment Microsoft Project with a terrific software called WBS Schedule Pro. I use it a lot to develop project management work breakdown structures, an example of which is here is a work breakdown structure that is prepared using WBS Schedule Pro. What I like about developing work breakdown structures is that it removes a lot of extraneous information at the beginning of a project that people don't need to focus on. If you present a Gantt chart, you've got the WBS, you've got the activities, there's way too much information at an earlier time in the project. So you develop a work breakdown structure, and that's all. If you show the work breakdown structure to the client, and the client doesn't agree with that, don't spend any time developing any other Gantt charts or anything. It's unimportant. This is the work we need to do to satisfy the project. Forget about the cost. Forget about the schedule. This is the work we need to do. If I have misunderstood the work of your project, now that we have this WBS chart, please show me where I've misunderstood the assignment. I'll cross out that work and take it out of the project. When you have resolved an understanding of the work of the project, then you can move on to costing and scheduling and everything else. But project management always revolves around work. But coming back to your question, different kinds of software. So you have all the predictive software. Okay, the work breakdown structure, the network diagram, the Gantt charts, the responsibility tables. In adaptive, there are different, it's more fluid. You've probably seen an ads for programs such as Jira, such as Slack. These are online applications. They utilize, and Microsoft Planner utilizes a tool called the Kanban board. And this is a way of pulling down tasks. Remember, in Agile, it's very quick, it's very iterative. So the team is not being commanded to do tasks as in predictive. In adaptive, the team is pulling down tasks. The project manager in adaptive is not commanding the work. They are coaching the team. Okay, very different approaches. So the software of predictive is, if you think of Microsoft Project or Open Project, and then all of those kinds of charts, Gantt charts, WBS, network diagram, that's predictive. Kanban boards and communication tools, again, like Slack and Jira, et cetera, therefore adaptive. Two completely different kinds of processes that use different sets of tools.
Great, Don. Thank you very much for answering all the questions in the Q&A window, and it seems that you have answered them all now. Don, do you have any closing remarks before we end?
We've had a lot of people attend this, and I'm really happy that we have had up to 100 participants interested in talking about project management. As you can probably tell, it's a passion of mine. The reason I got into project management was very early in my career. I was working in a large firm, and because of my background before architecture and while I was an intern, I spent a lot of time working in laboratories and hospitals. Prior to becoming an architect, I was an electron microscope technologist, just for some background. But I got into a firm as an intern, but as a hospital planner. And there was one project, and the hospital project, and the budget was 35, the cost estimate was $35 million. This is going back quite a few decades. But the budget was 15 million. The ministry looked at these documents and basically said, what were you thinking? $400,000 worth of documents were simply thrown in the garbage can and start over. And there was a complete expectation that the client would pay for this without question. That's when I started to really think, what? How can we possibly accept this kind of thing? This is crazy. That started my exploration in project management. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for participating today. Again, you can contact me by email at any time. If you miss the email, I'm sure Felix can pass it on to you. And I really appreciate spending time with you today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all very much for a great webinar today. And as we conclude this webinar, I would like to draw your attention to several important announcements. Our next webinar is scheduled for next week, also on Thursday, February the 8th at 11 a.m. under the title, Calculate Your Project's Embedded Carbon in Part 9 Construction with a Material Carbon Emissions Estimator. We cordially invite you to join us to this webinar as well. The OAA will report your participation in this webinar to your transcript. Therefore, there is no need for individual reporting on your part. We kindly ask for your patience as we process and confirm the accreditation of those hours within the next few weeks. Additionally, all entities will soon receive the presentation file via email along with a link to submit your feedback, which we highly value. Once again, thank you very much for your attendance and have a productive and pleasant remainder of your day. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.